Dang. Morning, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. Urgency's definitely picked up because we've gotten into quite the situation with the tropics here. We also have a threat for severe weather today that it's kind of going a little bit under the radar at the moment, but we'll get into that momentarily. But make sure you're hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, because this could be one of the most active weekends that I've seen in a long time on two fronts. So we know the situation about the Pacific, but also the Atlantic is really starting to pick up here. There's 4 different areas that have chances of tropical development here. Have to watch the Gulf, which is concerning to me if this does end up coming to fruition, because the Gulf of Mexico has been extremely hot, actually dealing with record-breaking sea surface and water temperatures here, especially over here towards Florida, where we've seen even up to 100 degrees on the water temperature, which is unheard of. So very concerned about the Gulf of Mexico right now. Really hoping that nothing major ends up occurring from this, but definitely something to keep an eye on. And then it looks almost as if we have a whole train of tropical waves right behind this one, all of them with increasing chances of development throughout the week, one behind the other. We go from yellow to orange all the way to red. Red being a 60% plus chance of development, orange being 40 to 60%, and yellow being less than 40%. But the fact of the matter that we're seeing that is absolutely insane. Then, of course, we go to the Pacific. We have Hurricane Hillary out here, and this has been making big-time headlines here, as Hillary is actually expected to likely make landfall in Southern California. We're already starting to get into that time frame now where we're getting multiple watches and warnings at this point. So here's the forecast cone for Hillary, as Hillary has now made it to a major hurricane and could very well even briefly become a Category 5. It is expected to weaken as it draws closer to land. By the time it gets towards Southern California here, it is likely to be a tropical storm. But instead of it being a post-tropical system, it's now expected to be fully tropical. So the rain threat with this will increase immensely. The wind field is also going to be insane. And with this also will come the threat of flash flooding, maybe even a few tornadoes, and much more. But we already have our hurricane watches and tropical storm watches and warnings all in effect across this area here, especially from the Baja right now. I will anticipate that some of these areas here towards the western coast of Southern California will end up under tropical storm watches very soon. But as of right now, as far as intensity is concerned, I would say maybe this could be a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm by the time it makes landfall, maybe a little less, because conditions, of course, as we go further to the north, the water's a little bit cooler. And also, there's a little bit of an increase in wind shear, which should help weaken the storm. That being said, let's go ahead and look at some of the graphics real quick, and then we're also going to take a look at severe weather potential for today. But here is a look at the WPC's quantitative precipitation outlook here. We have an area over here towards Baja where we're potentially going to see up to maybe 6 to 10 inches, and then very scattered pockets throughout the area in the mountains here from San Diego all the way up towards even Fresno. So with these valleys and all the rivers that are within them, the flood threat is definitely going to be skyrocketing as the storm draws closer. So flash flooding potential, very rare, high risk. Usually you don't see these too often, especially not within this region. But this year it seems like we've had plenty of those as it is from the atmospheric river earlier this year. But already to see a high risk this early on from the 1 to 5 day excessive rainfall outlook is insane to me. But very much reasonable in this case. This is not a situation where somebody's overdone the forecast here. This is very much real unless something changes with this storm track and changes immediately. So not trying to paint a doom and gloom picture here, but we definitely need to be very weather aware throughout the course of the weekend. Here's the time frame of tropical storm force winds. By the time we get later into the afternoon and into the evening, we're going to be looking at the Baja starting to experience those winds. And then as time goes on, we're going to eventually see, as we get into Sunday afternoon, probably we'll start to experience those tropical storm force winds towards Southern California. And by the evening, those winds will be well inland by that point. So that being said, like I said, there's a lot to go over with this, and we'll probably be continuing to talk about Hillary as it draws closer to what is likely to be a landfall. So that being said here, we'll go ahead and now take a look at the weekend for the severe weather threat. I'm not expecting a whole lot. Today seems like the biggest day out of all of them. There's a pretty stout trough here that is set up over here across the northeast here. Actually, just a little more so north of the border. But it's set up in such a way where you get that proper veering, that directional turn over this area over here in New England to where severe weather seems likely today. And then throughout the rest of the weekend here, we start to see that heat dome come in. This is going to increase the temperatures over this area. And this is actually going to expand eastward. So this is where we're going to start to see it. This is where we're going to start to see that extreme heat coming into play. So make sure, of course, that you're staying hydrated and staying inside as much as possible if it can be helped. If you're working outside, of course, take a lot of breaks. But that's what we're looking like this weekend as far as the wind setup from the upper levels are concerned here. So now I've put the 500 in loop here. I think the time frame for storms is going to be earlier in the day, maybe early afternoon, maybe even late morning. There could be a potential second round, but I think the potential within the atmosphere is going to be limited. Cape will be a little bit more limited with this setup. Not to say that it can't happen, but I would look more so towards the coast later in the day, if anything. But we'll do a little bit more digging around as time goes on throughout the video here. So I guess in a way you could call this a reaction, because you know how the weather models like to change. I've been trying to keep track of this a little bit. It hasn't necessarily gone under my radar, but my attention, of course, has been focused especially on the tropics as of late. That being said here, like I said, I do see a little bit of potential for a secondary round late in the evening. But based off what I'm seeing with the lower level winds towards the mid levels, I think the greatest threat for severe is going to be more so mid-morning to early afternoon. As we get into the weekend, of course, the threat really starts to diminish. Our attention really starts to shift towards the tropics at this point. So we'll look at this loop one more time here. And like I said, I'm thinking probably at best between 17 to 19 Z, I think, is when the peak point for severe will be. But that being said, let's get into the temperatures really quickly. Temperatures are going to be ridiculous as we get into the weekend, and then next week is probably when things are going to be at their hottest. So let's make sure, like I said before, that we would be staying inside as much as possible, because you can very clearly see the triple digits really starting to run rampant by the time we get into tomorrow and then Saturday as well. Humidity and dew point we already talked about in the video earlier this week. It's going to be running rampant. Also, with the severe weather setup, that's another thing that's going to be pretty ample at this point, because you can see the 60s and 70s across this region heading into the New England region right around that peak time. So like I said, with severe weather, timing is everything. I've said that many a times before, and it looks like we're getting into a setup here that's pretty notable. I really think the tornado threat's going to be the most notable thing, if anything. And then as we go forward here, I really think the limiting factor is more so going to be Cape, because wind shear definitely seems to be there. But from what I can see, like I said, we're not going to be breaking the walls down here, so to speak, with Cape at 1232. It's sufficient enough for severe weather, though, and that's the main thing to be concerned about. So by clicking on this here, you can see that this has the appearance of a squall line based on the photograph here. Decent amount of D-Cape. And there's good, like I said, good directional shear at the low levels all the way up to the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. Lapse rates are not super steep, but nonetheless, though, like I said, there's still a fair amount of potential with this. But we'll have to see how things play out with that. I really think a little bit earlier in the morning we'll present the greatest threat here. And then there's a couple other areas where we had marginal risk too. I don't know if I've even shown the map here for today, but here's our 2% area over here. Our 5% area is here. And here's our hail threat over here as well. Video's a little disorganized, so I'm kind of rushing here. I actually should be out of the door right now. But as we get into the evening here, we can see our secondary areas coming into play. And then Saturday, we get Cape, we get instability, but the storm threat's going to be a lot lower. Because here's a look at day 2. There's actually no severe area to talk about at the moment. And then, of course, Sunday, we're looking at the tropics to cause severe weather potentially across Arizona, parts of Southern California, and Southern Nevada. I guess quickly, the last thing we're going to do is take a look at the radar, and we'll go on from there. So, like I said, here's our squall line. Early in the day, there's some potential, and then we do get a few straggler showers here, but other than that, not really thinking there's going to be much more in the way of severe weather. You're going to get the around in mid-morning to early afternoon, and that's pretty much going to be that. And then from there on, as far as precipitation, significant severe weather is concerned, we're going to be shifting a lot more towards the tropics. And you can maybe even see right towards the midday or end of the day here, we'll see these feeder bands really start to come in across Southern California towards San Diego. Pretty surreal to see this situation unfolding. It's very rare that we get these. But we're gonna be of course live on this channel here to cover that, and of course much more. Plenty of hurricane coverage coming your way here. But I gotta run here. This has been Tired Metalhead Weatherman. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, decimate that share button. Make sure you get the bell on for notifications to every video. But till this afternoon, I will see you later.